suit shoes and a figure above that walking into the forest between houses. And I was like, okay, that's really scary. I'm scared. Slender Man's going to eat me. In time, I have not seen anything like that ever since.
But it was the one time.
It was the one time, and it was very... And this is why I like him, is because I was so engrossed with it that I had my own experience with it. Whether it was real or not, it was really interesting for me to have a personal experience with it. And that's why he's on there for me personally. And also too, there was that story about those girls who stabbed their friend for Slender Man.
Yeah, but that
was definitely not true.
I was gonna say, if you ever watched there's a really good documentary about that HBO did called Beware the Slender Man, I think.
Yes.
And if you see that documentary, like, you absolutely understand how that happened and why it happened, because what the news outlets generally were saying were oh, this is dangerous, you shouldn't let your kids read this stuff, like, this is crazy, this is like, they generally, for somehow Slender Man became the one who was blamed for this somehow. And if you watch the documentary, like, these were children. Like,
yes.
Big disclaimer here, these were children.
Actual children.
Like, actual children. They were like 12-year-old girls. But one of them is actually, like, clearly mentally ill, to the point where I remember they were saying that she, once they had her incarcerated, did not stop talking to fictional characters, continued to do it even more so possibly, where she would have full conversations with, like, Professor Snape, and, like, she had a whole catalog of fictional characters who she would have discussions with. And so it was definitely not this happened because Slender Man is evil and corrupted these children. It was because this child was definitely had some untreated mental issues and was able to convince her friend somehow to go along with this.
I did not know about that because I only watched part of that documentary.
Oh, the whole documentary. It's heartbreaking. Like, it's really sad.
It is.
But it's a fantastic documentary. I 100% would recommend that to people.
I should finish that.
You should go back and watch the rest of it.
I should. So Slender Man's my number 5.
So one quick thing before we move on from Slender Man. I have a quick Slender Man Jake related story. It's not the one Jake thinks I'm about to tell.
All right.
One of the first conversations I remember having with Jake, like, long conversations, was about Slender Man that I was completely mishearing. Because I remember, because I like scary stuff, I had said to Jake, like, what are you afraid of? Like, what scares you? Because I'm weird, and that's one of my first questions I ask to people, because I like to know that. And I remember I had told you something that scares me, and you were telling me about Slender Man. And we were in a public place, because we were in college, and people were watching TV loudly behind us, and I couldn't 100% make out everything you were saying. And I had heard of Slender Man. Like, I knew of Slender Man. Not a lot, but I knew of him. And for whatever reason, when you were talking, what I heard was Sunder Man. And I'm picturing, like, Bizarro Superman, because Jake was really into comics at the time. And so you're like, I'm really scared of Sunder Man. Like, Sunder Man can do this, and Sunder Man, like, defies the laws of physics, and, like, all this shit, and you're describing the things that happen in Marvel Hornets. And I'm, like, picturing these events in my head, but instead of Slender Man, it's, like, Bizarro Superman doing the things. And I remember being like, this is an odd thing for Jake to be this scared of. Sunder Man? I gotta look this up at some point.
I forgot about Sunder Man.
Sunder Man was
my god, that was so good. We have a couple other good Slender Man stories, but we'll go into those another time.
We'll do a creepypasta episode one day.
All right, cool. So that's Slender Man, and see, he's up there for me. Number 4 is again, Cameron does them in an order of value. I do not, because I can't do it, because I like them for all different reasons. And my number 4 is the Thunderbird. Now, I do want to specify that the Thunderbird is a concept in Native American mythology. And that is definitely not what's going on that the people are claiming is the Thunderbird. And I don't like associating the two, because it is offensive to them, and I agree with that, because it is definitely not, and it's just kind of something that got tacked on because of how easy it is for Americans to just tack Native American things.
People attached the name to something that they were
Exactly.
seeing without it actually having very much to do with it at all.
A mystic thing in North America must be the Native American thing. Like, it's dumb. And so I want to separate that. The only reason I'm calling it that is because that's what it's called, and I wouldn't know what to call it otherwise. But I just want you to know I'm divorcing those two things. There is the mythical Thunderbird with a capital T, and I'm making a new Thunderbird with a lowercase t to refer to this. Now, I just think this is interesting because I'm very, very into birds, and I like birds, and I like the concept of this thing existing. What it is a creature of unknown origins that has been seen for centuries. The earliest is the 1800s, of large, giant, flying creatures with wingspans tens of feet long, and I like 10. Not 6 to 9 is common, but I've seen 10 to 12 and a little bit longer as well. So they're these giant flying creatures. The very first one, which is the one I wanted to talk about, was in Texas in the late 1800s, and if I remember correctly, again, we're gonna get corrected. But what I remember off the top of my head is that it was a dad and his son, and they were going out hunting for something or checking their ranch or whatever, and they saw a shadow flying around, and they were like, "What the fuck is that?" And they look up and they see this giant bird thing in the sky. They have no idea what it is, but they follow it and they shoot it and they fell it. And then they go and they measure it. This thing's giant. I think it had a 10 or 12 foot wingspan.
Oh my God.
And but what they described it as, and this is very well documented that this happened at the time, is that it was hairless, featherless, smooth skinned. And its wings were not feathered; it was membrane, and it had a large beak and like a grip things, talons you could call them, but they didn't quite call them that, I don't think. And it was like that, and they had that, and then they got the local coroner to show up to look at it and to like examine it, and then they took a picture of it. And they started carting it around, showing it to people for scientific reasons. And then the body decayed, and then they got rid of it. But there was a documentation of it happening. There's a newspaper article about it, and there's a lot of descriptions of it from other people who claim to have seen it. Does the
picture still exist?
Here's the thing: the picture disappeared.
Oh.
So that's where it comes like a cryptid thing, because there's all this documentation of seeing this creature, but the only photograph of it that they took vanished. And there's lots of people throughout time that have claimed that they had the picture and it was lost, that they lost it, or that they found a reproduction and all this stuff, and then it got destroyed or whatever. So like, it's just kind of strange that picture. I don't think any of the claims after the original picture was lost were real.
Yeah.
I do think that the original... So, first off, do I believe Slender Man is real? No, I don't think Slender Man is real. He was made up on the internet, very specifically. He is very spooky, and I enjoy him as a fictional character.
Right.
Do I believe in Max? No. Do I believe in the Thunderbird concept? Yes, 100%.
I agree with you.
This is definitely some kind of raptor-type animal that is... and by I mean, like, not raptor, I guess, but, like... some kind of bat, familiar with the bats, I would say.
Yeah.
That it would make sense it would be like that in like a hot Texas climate and things like that. And so there's concepts of that shown in Texas. The other big place that it shows up is Alaska as well. There's and they've lumped them together, but I think they're different. So in Alaska, Japan, North Korea, that area, like the Bering Sea kind of area, there's these giant birds called Steller's sea eagles.
Yes.
Which I've shown you pictures of.
Yes, I have seen those.
And they're huge. They're fucking big. the sightings of the quote unquote Thunderbird there match a bird description, like an actual bird description. So a lot of people believe that those sightings of the Thunderbird are just stellar sea eagles that people may have never seen before, and so it looks really big, and they, out of fear or whatever,
they exaggerate
it.
This big.
And like, I don't think a lot of them do it intentionally, and like they were just kind of scared at how big it was.
Yeah.
And so like in their mind, it was bigger than it actually was. However, there's some interesting ones, like a guy on a plane saw one outside his window, and plane pilots are usually a lot better at sizing things from a distance, and it was definitely overly large. So I think if there is something with Alaska, that it's a variant of the stellar sea eagle that's much larger, and it lives in like colder climates, and maybe it hunts the larger animals that exist there because they have to survive to hunt something. So I would think that, but otherwise I think that the other thing is like kind of like the one in Texas is much more like pterodactyl type thing, like that is relative to a bat nowadays, but like kind of has like this weird following, and it would make sense that it would just be off in like the mountainous reaches where the people don't go casually, and like maybe just one found its way over there. There's constantly droughts and stuff down that area, so that it just goes off and flying looking for something to eat.
Might have been one of the last of its species.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible that since then there has been sightings within the last decade, but whatever it is, it's definitely a low population thing if it's real. I definitely do believe that this quote unquote Thunderbird does exist in Texas, though, and
I agree.
This other large bird creature in Alaska is real as well. Especially in Alaska, where you can't really explore Alaska.
Oh yeah.
So there's that. So that he, she, them, or they are my number 4. My number 3 is Nessie, of course, just because for me, Nessie is like the beginning of all this.
Yeah.
Like, again, Nessie was me being interested in Nessie was a thing when I was a kid, but for me, it wasn't always just about Nessie. It was about all of those kinds of sea creatures, Champ, Chesapeake Bay, Monster. All those ones.
Champ, I think, has the best picture of all of them.
Champ definitely has the best picture. So, like, I was really into those kinds of sea creatures. In general, I'm into the concept of sea serpents, which is kind of... I wanted to put that on the list, but it was too general. So I'm putting Nessie here as the placeholder, as the mother of my interest in sea serpents.
That's fantastic.
So, like, I'm really interested in those kinds of things. I really like reading stories about... the old sea serpent stories and seeing those old drawings. I really like that concept of these giant oceans and seas that have unknown things inside them that we'll never know about, and like seeing like the mysticism behind it in the past. So just also for sort of people's kind of background, I went to school for history, so I am by profession a historian. I don't do that every day, but it's still a thing I work with. And seeing that and reading those kinds of things really interesting to me, and how people take the unknown and they create mythologies around it. So like Nessie, unknown picture sightings, now there's this whole thing around Nessie, and then all of a sudden people are looking for lake monsters. They find Champ, they find the Chesapeake Bay monster, they find the one that's in the Great Lakes and all that stuff, the one in Lake Ontario, all these things. And they kind of create this story around them, and it builds the community together. There's one in Virginia whose name I don't remember now, but I just recently watched a documentary on it, and like it's such a thing there that like in the public school system at 3rd grade, you go to the lake and you go looking for it as part of like your learning thing.
That's
as
awesome.
Local history.
Dude, I wish I did that.
Oh, absolutely. And like whether or not it's real, they promote that, and there's a huge event in the summer that celebrates the town, but they make a big deal out of that, and people show up because of the monster there, and they try to look for him. And there's a children's book about it they give the children at that time. It's really cute, and it's awesome.
That is cute.
And so that's why I put Nessie up there, because I think that kind of community, there's a thing here that we all don't know about that we want to know about, and we're going to get together and appreciate that, is really cool. So that's. Do I believe though that specifically the Loch Ness monster or those monsters exist? Yes, I do.
I agree.
I don't think all of them are real because I feel like sometimes it might be, the concept of adoring things might create more than what's actually there.
Like there's tourism around having a lake monster.
Exactly.
Definitely Champ.
It's definitely that one. Definitely Nessie for me. Yes, on those. The concept of lake monsters, they're real. Specific ones might not be, but specific ones are.
Yes. I agree.
So that's my number 3. My number 2 is actually the Flatwoods monster.
Oh, that's a good one. I love the Flatwoods monster.
I also love the Flatwoods monster. In this moment of time, as I'm speaking to you, I do not remember any of the details of the Flatwood monster.
People did drawings of it.
Yes,
right?
that was the big thing, is that there's drawings of this creature, and it is bizarre looking.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of what hooked me on that. It was how bizarre it was, but how specific the encounters were. I don't remember what happened in them now because it's been a while since I've been into it.
They were creepy though.
They were
The Flatwoods monster was
super creepy, and like the drawing of it is essentially like it was very like old-timey alien like.
Yeah, it looked like a 50s like it came from outer space monster.
And it had like this thing behind its head that looked like a Christmas light in the shape, and it like floated, I think, and it like had arms. You couldn't quite see the legs.
Yeah.
It looked almost like fucking Char's last mobile suit in Gundam.
A little bit.
Yeah, it looked kind of like that.
Yeah.
But it's referenced all the time. So like the Flatwoods monster is a big cultural thing, and it was referenced, and it was a big deal when that happened because it's similar to the Mothman thing where it was documented, but this one was much more of like these people are crazy versus like because the sheer amount wasn't like it wasn't the same volume, but they were all very specific, and there was so much consistency in the encounters, and it was definitely scary. Like Mothman was definitely like something we didn't understand, but the Flatwood monster was scary. Like that was just straight up, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, the thing is that like the Mothman, a lot of people believe is like benevolent. Like it's a harbinger, but people think it might be trying to warn us. Like, hey, this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
You need to be careful. In some way, is attempting to communicate something to us.
Yeah. So just a note on that.
Yeah.
So part of the Mothman thing is that when you get when you interact with the Mothman, there's like history of headaches, like almost like radiation burns, and some people think that it's trying to communicate with us, and we just can't. Like it's a different type of communication that is bad for us and it hurts us.
Right.
Some people believe that's what it is. But because of those kinds of injuries, like people are like, oh, is it bad or is it good? But it never like it only attacked people in a defensive way.
Did it ever attack anybody?
It didn't like attack them, but like it would fly towards people and it would like land on their cars and stuff. But like the fashion of it was definitely like something trying to keep you away from something, and it had a distinct territory. And there was, if I'm remembering this correctly, there's a story where it had a very specific effect in a square range, and like you could drive through and feel a headache and everything, and then drive out of it.
That's weird.
And on the highway that it was always near. And so like it seemed like it has like a circle of where it wanted to be, and it didn't want you to be there. And it was always around something weird so that I could hide. But people thought that it was trying to just keep people away from something, and it was spotted near the bridge that ended up collapsing, indicating that it was trying to keep people away from the bridge.
Right.
And so that's what, and so there's that. So, but again, with the Flatwoods monster, again, I don't know. I don't remember a lot of the story.
It was definitely more sinister than
that.
Yeah,
it was definitely way more sinister. There was a flying saucer usually involved at some point.
The Flatwoods monster was almost like entirely this was aliens kind of thing.
Yeah, it was it wasn't like, is it a transdimensional being? It was definitely like it came from a spaceship and it showed up, and it was very scary.
And there was multiples.
Oh yeah, there was multiples of them, and it was a lot of different sightings, but they all kind of happened the same way.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of stopped suddenly.
Right.
So I watched a couple years ago now. I watched a bunch of documentaries on it because I was really, really fascinated by it. a group, Hometown Monsters, I think it's called, does a bunch of documentary series, and they did one on the Flatwood Monster, and that's how I got into it. So I highly recommend that specific group in their documentary on it. So definitely, just in general, because again, I'm sorry I can't provide a lot of details for the Flatwood Monster. Please do look it up, because it is definitely
cool.
worth it to go look it up and just to know that thing.
Yeah.
Do I believe it's real? That one I'm actually really on the fence about, because there's how specific the sightings were and the drawings were.
Yeah.
It makes me want to believe they saw something very specific out there.
That's the thing with me too, is that like when you see the drawing of the Flatwoods Monster and like what the people say it looked like if you asked me to pull out of my ass a scary what monster did you see in the woods, Cameron, like I would not design that thing, because it's not scary looking.
Yeah.
And it's not like normal. It's very geometric. Like
It's overly geometric, simplistic. And the design does match with like 50s, 60s, like when that happened.
Yeah.
Alien monster. And so like it would seem like you were lying about it.
Right.
Like it's definitely the design of it
in
definitely
a way, it would match with like a low budget sort of like 50s monster, but at the same time there was stuff about it that was much more
like people
odd.
wouldn't pick.
Yeah.
But
other than that, it was also like the fact that like no one describes the face ever.
Yeah.
It's like got a black, weird, like diamondy shaped face and then big red eyes.
Yeah.
Like that's weird.
It's definitely, it was odd. The whole thing about it is odd.
I couldn't imagine someone making that up when asked to describe what their monster encounter was.
Exactly. And it's just the vivid details of it. Like it's something scared these people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. Whether it was that monster or not, I'm just gonna put I don't know on this one, because this is definitely the one for me way up in the air.
Yeah.
I personally would like to believe it, but again, it just because of how specific everything was, I don't know whether to believe it or not, because it's compelling both ways.
Right.
But